So I would like to keep it short. I just wanted to mention a few words about our chamber, and I would like to give the floor to Mrs. Ting Zhang, who is the CEO and founder of Crayfish. Ms. Zhang, you have the floor.
Thank you, Gwen. Hello, good morning, everyone. Let me just pull up my slides. Yeah, so you can see it now?
Yes, we see it. It's perfect.
Okay, great. In the sort of 25 minutes I have, I will be talking about setting up a manufacturer in China, but I will start with actually overview of China's manufacturing, a little bit of the latest policy and trend. Before that, just quickly about Crayfish, about my company. Our official name is Crayfish.io Limited because we started with a digital platform in 2017 when it was launched. But now the company has expanded to include advisory, consulting, as well as IP monetization and IP commercialization business. We are a proud member of Flanders-China Chamber of Commerce, China Chamber of Commerce, FCCC, and we have been working with various companies in the Flanders region as well as other European countries. So that's about the Crayfish. And so I'll start with the evolving sort of landscape of China's manufacturing. So first, as you have heard from Gwen, China is the world's powerhouse. That's no doubt everyone knows about that. But it actually has been 15 consecutive years that China's output, industrial output, is the top of the world. And in last year, the figure is still massive, 40 trillion RMB, and that is about 4 trillion euro. And you can see from this chart, my colleagues actually put together for me that based on the CCTV report, VR equipment and the EV, as well as the EV's charging equipment, are among the highest growth last year. Not surprisingly, as we all read about Chinese EV and the EV industry growth every day. But China has not always had this manufacturing advantage in the last century, although China had the well-known 4 great inventions since about 100 AC, that is in Chinese Han Dynasty, but also in Song Dynasty, that is about before 1000 AD and all the way to 13th century. And it's very well known, China's compass and gunpowder and paper making, as well as printing, and all those happened within out of the 3 happened in Song Dynasty. But unfortunately, China lost its advantage in terms of manufacturing when the West have started, Great Britain started and then spread to the West in the Industrial Revolution. So China had a very backward century in terms of manufacturing. So in the last 4 decades, however, China has managed to catch up really quickly. And now it's not just caught up with the West, but in fact, in many other areas, it has exceeded the Western countries in terms of scale and capacity. This didn't happen by coincidence. It was a part of the government's long-term drive to boost China's manufacturing, but also specifically, there's this Made in China 2025 initiative, which was launched in China by the government under Xi Jinping's leadership in 2015. And the results is actually very encouraging. So as you see now, China's manufacturing is now still leading the world and more in the high-tech sectors. And the sector is continuing to be vital to the country's economic growth, but also employment generation and technological development and global competitiveness. And in 2023, the Chinese government pursued new policies and strategies, particularly to diversify China's manufacturing from the sort of old traditional toys and clothes and kind of manufacturing to smart, high-end, and green manufacturing. Particularly this phrase that if you're not familiar, you should be now, is called new productive forces. In Chinese, it's called 新质生产力. So this is a slogan coined by Xi Jinping a few years ago, 2 years ago, and it's basically aiming for China to go through a new economic model based on innovation, particularly in advanced sectors, so that China would lead the development of strategic emerging industries and future industries. And so, and this would include the use of AI, IoT, and a lot of the robotics as well as green technology. So if you look at China, everywhere they are advocating for green factories. I won't go through details, but essentially the less use of toxic materials and more recycling and more shift to low carbon energy sources. And in fact, if the company reaches this standard, they will be given an actual certificate or badge to say they're national level green factories. And in China, there's I think now the statistics is that such factories already reached 6,500. It's about total 20% of China's manufacturing has reached that. And as the Chinese government plans ahead the manufacturing development for future, they have designated many clusters, and these are not the sort of just the ones you know about, Shanghai, Shenzhen and Beijing, or the Pearl River Delta and Great Bay Area. These actually include many Western and central as well as northeastern provinces, and this is a direct initiative of Chinese government's continuous drive to sort of balance the regional development. And you can see the different color, different dots. And this again, my colleague has mapped them on the map, so you can see that along the coast there's more, but then also concentrated near the great near the Tianjin, Beijing area, but also now increasingly to the west and central part. And I think also Gwen alluded to that there's really not another China, but still in a wake of ongoing global supply chain disruptions and tariff wars, and Western companies are reconsidering over-reliance on China manufacturing is not sustainable. So some well-known foreign companies have already started shifting such production out of China. Here are some examples with the help of ChatGPT to show that some European companies, particularly in this case, Volvo and Signify, has moved the products to in the Volvo case to Belgium, but in the Signify it has actually moved to other emerging countries, emerging economies. So this is mainly due to the geopolitics pressure, uncertainties, but also some of them is local competition. For example, in EV sector. And you can see that HP has moved a lot of production out of China, but they officially still maintain that the company is very committed to China and still got many factories in China. And this is just a diversification strategic initiative to keep the company sustainable on that global scale. So key takeaways here is that you do need to consider China manufacturing if you are over-relying on that. In the meantime, there's many foreign companies investing in China, as Gwen again said, the European investment in China, and now it's similar level to Chinese companies into Europe. So there's a lot of continued investment in China. And this, I won't go through the details, but you can see that from various countries, and particularly in pharmaceutical, and also in the electronics, as well as in EV. As we know that Chinese EV is now leading the world in the production, so Western companies are also using that to help them to reduce costs and be close to the market to remain competitive. So now I will use the rest of the time to talk about how to set up your own factory, your own manufacturing in China. So this is an example of the work plan which we did for one of our clients that is still going, but it's near the end of this 6 months period. So when this client came to us for help in setting up its manufacturing plant, it's already had a sales office in China. So the first thing they need to evaluate is whether they expand that sales entity to a manufacturing entity in the same city, or they set up their own. So we did an evaluation of that, and then they decided to set up a new factory in a different city. So then also we evaluated whether they should consider subcontracting or setting up their own. So these are all the steps that typically you need to go through if you are thinking manufacturing in China. It's not just to set up your own manufacturing. It may be more cost effective if you outsource, but it may be suit your strategic goals if you have your own manufacturing facility. In this case, this client, their product is very high quality but low volume, and it's very hard for them to get the manufacturers who are qualified to produce that kind of quality, but at the volume they wanted. So it's better for them to have their own small assembly, but that is able to do what they want. And the reason also they are going to manufacturing in China is China is very important for them. The companies overall, this is a listed company in the UK, a high-tech sector, and they have already about 30% of the market share in China. In fact, 30% of the revenue comes from China. They have a higher market share in that particular sector. But the company used to have 50% of the revenue come from China. So they wanted to grow and another 10% in the next couple of years. In order to do that, some of the products needs to be able to be accepted in China according to the local pricing. And to do that, the only way they can do is bring the manufacturing to China for those particular models, while their high-end models or different models can still be manufactured in the UK. In order to sell to China, they have to localize that production, and that including localize the supply chain. So you can see the plan is first is all the planning, and then is the actual execution, which include the setting up of the entity and hiring the people, and also getting the site ready. And in between, and alongside that, we also did a cultural workshop for the whole China project team of the client, which is about 15 of them, covering manufacturing, materials, supply chain, and production. And so the whole team learned more about how they can get the best out of communicating with the Chinese colleagues, counterparts, but also protecting the IP and communicating more effectively. So to start with, which city, and you remember the map, there are so many cities in China that they all claim that they can manufacture all sorts of things. And of course, there are some different clusters. However, you will find that there's multiple cities that could potentially meet your requirements. So we did this exercise where we look at number of cities shortlisted and look at the economic profile in terms of the industry alignment and also whether they can they have the local supply, because close to supply chain is really important for manufacturers. As well as the logistic, because some of the products are going to be exported to outside China, to particularly like to India and the ASEAN countries. And China is very important for that. Although for this particular case, the client is not looking to export back into the UK or European or US, because that's well served for the UK manufacturing. So this is very much for within China, but also for the Asian, Southeast Asian, and ASEAN countries. And finally, also look at operational expenditure that includes salaries. For example, at least here in comparison, you can see that Dongguan, for example, has a much lower overall cost from the workers, but also the manager level. And bear in mind, in China, the social insurance cost, the welfare cost is actually a big add-on. So you can't just work on the salary. You need to put the whole figures in. And then there's once you choose a city, there's typically various zones competing for foreign investment. So you again shortlist and then go to see how how it works with logistics, and also how you feel about the industrial park and who are the neighbors. These pictures are all taken from my last visit with this particular client in March this year. And the top one, you can see that is one of the empty place we had visited, and a number of them, 3 different sites. And it is typically, if you do some weight-bearing equipment, you want the ground floor. However, the Chinese government now is encouraging, there's a slogan called manufacturing go upstairs. So that means some of the light manufacturing, you actually have a better cost advantage if you go, say, the 4th floor. One of my photos on the left, you can see that it's actually designed for manufacturing, but it's on the 5th floor, I think. But the lift is designed to for the manufacturing use as a very wide, 3 meters wide lift. So because it's much cheaper to rent upstairs, and also you will have more choices. Ground floor always goes first. But one thing is that don't just go for the presentations, because we went to the sites. We also watched some of the presentations, which looks amazing, and how one particular industrial part, the government designated it for the future manufacturing base. However, when you go there, when you actually visit it, most of them are very, very early stage. So if you do move in, you will be probably only one factory operating in quite a few areas. So maybe in 5 years' time, that's good for you. But unless you're going to take a big space, if you're just going for a small factory, then go for the more established industrial parks, which is what we have chosen with this particular client. And on this one, I want to mention that typically companies know how important to build guanxi, which is connect relationship with local government. However, what I want to say is right at the beginning of your exercise, not when you already set up a factory open and you think, oh, let's build a factory relationship with the government. And you all know that of course, Elon Musk is good with building government relations, not just in China, but US, although slightly different now with the US. But in China, he still enjoys very good relationship with the Chinese government, right from the top level. But this was with the Shanghai then party secretary and who's now the China's premier, Li Qiang. So with, of course, Tesla managed to build the mega factory with less than 1 year and build all through COVID lockdown period. And that was not possible without the massive help from the Shanghai government in terms of funding, as well as other policy report. But for a small manufacturer, when you go to a Chinese city, you may not go into Shanghai, because Shanghai is really very costly now. And also the selection to get the government attention, you need to be a very big scale and also advanced. But if you go to a small city, as I mentioned earlier, in Dongguan, it's different. The city is very, most of Chinese cities are desperate for foreign investment, and particularly manufacturing, where it can boost a lot more manufacturing workers' employment. So in our case, which in this particular case, for this particular kind, we choose Dongguan. And when we got there, I already used our network to get the mayors to be involved. And so the local government officials were at our service almost 7/24. You won't imagine that in the past with Chinese government officials, they were literally sending me replies and information at midnight, their time, which was more than impressive. And then when the COO of the company, of the client, visited Dongguan to look at the sites, the mayor took out of his very busy schedule on the weekend to treat us a lunch and to talk about how important the manufacturing is to the Dongguan city and how his government, how keen they are to support it. So the factory will be opened in July, but we will possibly have a big opening in September, where the mayor and the local government will come and open it. And of course, when the factory, no matter how nice the facility is, the most important is the people, the team. And how do you get the right people right from the beginning? Because you are talking about a very short time frame, 6 months for it up and running from right at the beginning. So in this case, we actually started even before we started the incorporation process. So as you remember, the 6 months plan, so the hiring of the first person, which is most important, the factory manager, needs to allow for 3 months. So we started in March, and then in May, the person is in place to actually start the manufacturing sites preparation and to work with the parks to on how to get the site ready for manufacturing. And in China, there's various channels you can source such people. And we used a BOSS channel, which is more for the sort of senior level managers and directors or level. But if you go to the workers, then they're local. You just job center, there's other channels that you can use. And it's important, if you do find someone you like for example, particular senior level, it's really important you act quickly, because this kind of talent don't stay sort of available long. So in this particular case, the company were able to make an offer the day after, a formal offer a week after, but orally, they actually told the best candidate within 2 days that they wanted to hire him. And even though we know that China has a massive youth employment problem, these are typically related to university. So that's university students brought, newly out of the factory, all very, unskilled. So if you look at a triangle, with the senior level, you have much less supply. That's why the speed is important. And also some other things worthwhile to mention, as in China, the labor contract is different. Just one example. Here, typically, companies want a 3 months probation, but in China, if your contract is 1 month, you can only have 1 month probation. And then you can have, if your contract is 1 to 3 months, then you can have 2 months probation. So those kind of details are very important. And finally, you do need to train them and brought the key staff to the UK, Europe in this case, to train them so that they will be ready and to take the company culture right at the beginning to start your company. And this is the last slides. With all the preparations, it's important to get the right license, and with the typical sort of business license application process applies. But very importantly, for manufacturing business, you need to specify all the potential product parts you're going to manufacture. And this all have to appear on the business license. As you can see on the right-hand side, that's what a business license looks like. And at the bottom, that's all the list of what is going to be manufactured. And if it's not in the list when you apply it, later you cannot manufacture without having to reapply for that to be amended. Okay, so think all the possibilities that you're going to manufacture and put it there, get approved at the beginning. And then just the time frame wise, if you look at here, it looks like it's only like take 5 weeks to set up. But however, 2 months. However, the actual preparation of documents by the parent company, i.e. your headquarter company, is typically underestimated because the level of details and the compliance by the Chinese local registration authorities is very thorough. So even if a tiny incompliance or discrepancy will lead to rejection or lead to lengthier application. So take time to prepare, but make sure you check that. And we would advise that you take some preliminary consultation to understand the tax implication, particularly supply chain. For example, in this case, whether you use a bonded warehouse in order to get the best for the logistic flow, so you don't have to re-export and re-import for certain tax advantages and also for the market requirements. So this is very important to plan in advance, because once you've gone the wrong way, it will be very costly for you to reverse that those kind of terms and arrangement with location and supply chain.
We need to wrap up because we have to go also to the next speaker. So if
yeah,
all right, yeah, okay.